Southeast Mortgage, the official home loan lender of the Georgia Bulldogs, presents the official podcast of Dawgs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. On today's program, we'll give you the latest news from the world of University of Georgia athletics and more. And now, from the broadcast studios of Dawgs on Demand, here's your host, Chris Hall.
Touchdown!
Chris Hall here for Dawgs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and soon on the radio. And it's good to have with us today Rusty Manziel, recruiting analyst for CBS Sports, Georgia writer for 247sports.com, color analyst for Peachtree TV high school football games, and there's probably 19 other things that he does on the side. Bless his heart, he has nothing to do. Rusty, how you doing? Good to have you on our program today.
You sound like you're about 3 jobs behind me. You're trying to catch me. You're going the opposite direction. You're trying to get to the retirement age, and you're adding work. I don't want to be doing that, man.
You know, I've tried to retire like 9 times. It just doesn't happen.
Mom sounds like my mom. She's retired like 3 different times, and she's went right back after every 4 months. She just can't do it.
Yeah, it's in your blood, and you work and you enjoy what you're doing. So if you enjoy what you're doing, why quit, right? So as long as you can hold out, you can get with it. Well, of course, we want to talk a little bit about UGA football and some other things as well. Spring practice begins on Tuesday, March 14th, as we record this. That'll be tomorrow. The spring game for UGA coming up on April 15th. And so here we go. We've had time to digest that second national championship, which is just, have you come to grips with that yet? I'm still, it's amazing to me. Georgia has won back-to-back national championships after 40 years of, in between the national championships. It really is quite amazing. And even to this moment, it's hard to believe, right?
Yeah, and we're not obviously here to discuss this, but Georgia wins back-to-back national championships. You're in the kind of the processing celebration part, and then you have a tragedy that kind of took place in Athens with the young folks, and two members of the Georgia program no longer with us, and that's kind of, not saying derail, but kind of has put the talk. I think when Kirby speaks on Tuesday to the media, I know he spoke with Mark Slabaugh. I think when he speaks to the media and he answers the questions and he talks about this, you don't kind of move on. I'm not saying like a cheap way to move on. I think we just kind of, okay, he's answered those questions now. Spring practice is here. And really and truthfully, Chris, I think the mentions of Georgia and when it will kind of really set in for me personally kind of is when we get to SEC Media Days. And it really, that switch turns to, hey, it's football season. And every question that Georgia, Kirby Smart, and whoever they bring in that room in Nashville, everything is going to be back-to-back, back-to-back, back-to-back. Then people are going to start breaking it down. Can Georgia do this? So it's really one of those things like, me and you, we look back at the Braves and that role they had for like 17 or 18 years. Now you understand it, but Georgia won the national championship back-to-back. It's crazy to even think of, but I think as the summer rolls around, I think people are going to really process that what Georgia just did. And quite honestly, Chris, what they're capable of maybe doing a third time, which is unthinkable, to be honest with you.
All right. It really, we're still in the processing stage of it, indeed. So as we get into spring practice now, baseball started. You and I love golf, and we've been watching golf and, and things like that. But now it's, it's time for spring practice all across the SEC, all across the country. Let's kind of focus in a little bit on Georgia, and everybody is talking about, okay, who's going to be the starting quarterback for the University of Georgia? Who steps up after Stetson Bennett? And I would, you got Carson Beck, you have Brock Vandegrift, and you have Gunnar Stockton. Those would be the 3 in the mix to be the starting quarterback. Carson Beck, you got to think he's the front runner, redshirt junior class of 2024, 4-star quarterback coming out of high school. As you sit down and look at this now, is that a done deal? Is Carson Beck going to be the man, or are we really going to have competition for the starting quarterback?
Here's the thing about this, Chris, and you and I both are going to answer this a million times between now and then. Not one single person on that team has taken a meaningful minute,
right,
snap. and they have not taken a snap to where they were the starter on Monday and they knew all week it was on them. So, right or wrong, at one point, the Georgia staff went through a fall camp and DeJuan Mathis was the guy.
Right.
And for all indications, we kept hearing like, hey, this guy's pretty good. Well, he got in the game and he couldn't do it. So I'm not saying that's going to happen to anybody else, but until Georgia, and I'm not talking about Ball State and no offense to the Tennessee Martin, but I'm talking about that South Carolina game.
Yeah.
I'm talking about that early Auburn game. Who is the guy then? But no doubt about it, the process starts right now. I don't think it's a done deal by any means. I do think Carson Beck has a little bit of the leg up, but here's the thing now. Mike Bobo, everybody starts ground zero again. And, it's his team to the offense to run. And he's certainly going to make a big decision there along with Kirby Smart on who's going to be the guy. So this is a big spring. It's going to be a big summer. It's going to be a big fall camp. I don't know that we're actually going to know who this guy is until we play those meaningful minutes in the fall.
Right. And, each one of these quarterbacks have kind of a different nuance to their game.
Yeah.
I really like Carson Beck. I like his arm strength. He's shown some poise when he's been in the games. But man, Brock Vandagriff, he's a big boy and he can move and he can throw. And Gunnar Stockton, he kind of advanced a little bit as being the quarterback on the scout team. I understand. It's really going to be interesting. Todd Monken, of course, has moved on now to the NFL, the offensive coordinator for the University of Georgia. You have Mike Bobo stepping in there. Yeah, and Mike, him very well. Georgia fans know him very well. Yep. What kind of quarterback would he lean toward, you think? Now, Mike was a quarterback himself, but, what kind of quarterback do you think Mike Bobo would lean toward? Does he want the pocket guy or does he want the guy that can get outside the pocket when necessary? I don't know. What is your opinion on that?
I think who wins this job is going to earn it through respect. Let me clarify that. Mike Bobo was a guy that had the belief of his teammates around him. He's got kind of that alpha mentality. I think Mike would tell you he wasn't blessed athletically. But what he didn't have at that point in college was he had grit. He had the respect of everybody in that huddle. So if you're going to play quarterback for Mike Bobo, the 10 other guys in the huddle are going to believe in you.
Yeah.
And, that takes time to find out. Now, obviously, the game has changed. So you want a dual threat guy. You want to be able to get out of the pocket. You want to be able to move. So you look at those guys, and you obviously checks the box with Brock Vandagriff, and obviously checks the box with Gunnar Stockton. Carson Beck, maybe with a little better arm than both. He's pretty accurate as far as I know. He is able to process things. He doesn't move as well as the other two, but he's certainly not a statue. So I think that all those factors are going to play in, but I have zero hesitation in my answer with Mike Bobo is you're going to be a guy that's got some backbone to you, and that's what he looks for. You got to be a guy that can stand in there and take it. Aaron Murray obviously was a guy, Matt Stafford, even as gifted as he was and quiet as he is off the field, was demanding and commanding of the huddle. So, we're going to find out all these things. And listen, Chris, I don't hesitate in saying this. Georgia's got 3 good quarterbacks. It's a great problem to have. Yeah. How they separate themselves is going to be fascinating to me because I'm telling you right now, they got 3 quarterbacks that could start a lot of places that are battling it out. I talked to Brock Vandagriff at the state championship game. His dad's a head coach, and I've known Brock a long, long time. So we had a pretty candid conversation, and I said, Brock, what you thinking, man? He goes, man, everybody thinks I'm leaving. He goes, I'm not leaving. And I said, I got you. And he said, listen, I can't leave this place not knowing that I didn't give a chance and a fighting chance to win this job. And that's his mentality. He thinks he can win this job. And I don't think anything different from him. Knowing him, I've known Gunnar a long time. Gunnar is wired like that. Obviously, Carson Beck has stayed around when he could have left. So it's fascinating, man. It's going to dominate the coverage every day. Everybody's going to be asking who had the best day, but I still think no matter how this thing plays out, I think we're not going to truly know until probably sometime in the fall, like, okay, this is the guy.
Yeah. I kind of, it's an amazing thing. You kind of mirror these quarterbacks against Stetson Bennett. I mean, two-time national champion quarterback, which one is similar to Stetson Bennett, which is, kind of interesting that I do that. I don't know if anybody else does that. I think the one who comes closest to mirroring Stetson Bennett would be Gunnar Stockton, with his, his versatility and his ability to run and throw. And there are other questions. Every team has questions going into spring practice. So let's talk a little bit about, the rest of the team. Yeah. As you look over this Georgia roster, as you'll be observing some of the practices coming in, what do you think are, outside the quarterback room, the most significant questions, concerns, weaknesses, strengths for UGA going into spring practice?
Well, I'll be honest with you. It's hard to say that Georgia might have a better roster than last year, and because they've added some edge guys. Can Damon Wilson, can Samuel Mpemba, those guys that are true freshmen, can they help there? Because Georgia was so thin at outside linebacker at the end with all those injuries. It's crazy they won the national championship. Basically didn't have an outside linebacker. I mean, Nolan Smith was out. Marvin Jones Jr., they was only able to play like 10 snaps a game. So, I'm interested in Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett. You add two big-time SEC transfers into the passing game. And, from what I was told, they allowed those guys, they got a chance to see Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift and those guys throw during the national championship practices. So, they kind of said, okay, I'm confident whoever's playing quarterback at Georgia. Kenny McIntosh is going to be hard to replace, so I'm interested in running back. But you look at Brock Bowers coming back, you look at Amarius Mims, and also I think really offensive tackle is where you are. Can Ernest Green be that guy? He's coming off back surgery, those types of things. So I'll be honest with you, man. I'm not, I don't want to jinx anybody, but 1 through 85, I think Georgia athletically, without injuries, has a better team than last year. Now, it's all going to come down to this quarterback position because we all both know how important that is. But I'm telling you, Georgia athletically, what they've added, a lot of guys back. It's going to be interesting to see what they look like at the end of spring practice.
And, as you look at the recruiting, the class that's coming in and you look at the guys on the team now, they may even have a better roster next year. It's amazing, isn't it? What's happening in Georgia?
Offensive tackle is going to be the one next year, but they're Broderick Jones is going to be a first round. Hope the Falcons take him at number 8. They're going to slide Amarius Mims over to left tackle. Well, Amarius Mims is going to be a first rounder. So right now, they played this season with Warren McClendon, Amarius Mims, and Broderick Jones, 2 first rounders in my opinion, and probably a third or fourth rounder. Who they're going to have at tackle in 2024 is going to be a big question to me. But defensively, I'm telling you now, they've added some dudes, as we like to say in the recruiting business. I'm telling you, that outside linebacker room is something that Georgia's really, I think, needed some help there. And with Marvin Jones Jr., Damon Wilson, Gabe Harris, Thomas County Central, with IMG, him, and then Samuel Mpemba, who will start tomorrow from IMG as well at first practice. They got some guys there, man. I think they have really, really raised the level of play in that room.
Yeah, it's amazing and it's exciting. Of course, the G-Day game will be on April the 15th. That's going to be so much fun to watch, And then we got that long summertime as we watch the Braves win the division and maybe go into the series. You can always hope. Now, the second transfer portal window, I guess you could call it, opens up on May the 1st. You have I understand 15 days. After that, after spring practice, the guys say, well, I might need to go somewhere else. Any idea of maybe, I know you can't project that, but could Georgia pick up a couple from the portal? Would Georgia need to pick up somebody in the portal?
Well, it's according to how spring practice goes. Here's the thing in that window, Chris, you can't transfer within conference, so it can't be an SEC player. So you knock that out. But you look what they go through in spring practice and go, maybe we need this, maybe we need that. My opinion, if they take anything in that May the 1st through 15th window, it may be a running back, some extra depth there. Because when you lose Kenny McIntosh, listen, Kendall Milton, big back. You look at Branson Robinson, big back. Can they get that? We don't know what Andrew Paul's going to do. He's coming off ACL, so don't really know there. Can they get that shifty guy? Kind of, it's a matchup problem. If they could get a guy like that, I think that would be something that Georgia could add in that May 1st or May 15th window. And Georgia's going to lose some players in that window. It's just going to happen. I would watch the O-line room. They're so deep there. I don't particularly know who, but usually there'll be one or two. Georgia's going to lose 2 or 3 in that window. That's just reality, and a lot of people are.
I wonder if, when a guy goes into the coach's office and say, look, coach, I feel like I need to go somewhere else so that I can play.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how coaches react to that. Do they encourage the guy and say, look, you're stacked here and you may not be able to play. I know you may not know, but I wonder how coaches react to that.
From my experience, I would say 70% of the time the coaches agree. What they try to diffuse is that kid that's upset because he's still third string at the end of spring and he didn't have a good spring and maybe he's pouted up. He's got, he's dragging his lip in there and like, coach, I got to get out of here. And you're like, no, you're going to stay and fight, and what if Stetson Bennett would have left? Because he was 4th string coming out of spring. He was 3rd string. Then he was 4th string coming out of fall camp. It was an afterthought. And the dude wind up, so there's examples, but I would say probably 70, 75%. They're like, look, you definitely need to go, somewhere and get where you can play. And we'll help, as far as I know, from what I'm just talking to some people, Georgia's helped some guys. They helped play some guys in Nebraska. The coaches call and say, look, can MJ Sherman play? Yeah, MJ Sherman can play there. He's a little behind here, but he definitely can help you. He's a good kid. So there's a lot more that goes on, and people think they walk in there and Kirby signs a paper and never sees them. There's a lot that goes on to those where they try to help those kids as well.
Yeah, I was thinking too, the coaches probably do help. They say, listen, you go into the portal. I know a place where you might can play, and they make contacts, and that would just be good. I think that would be good for the kid, looking out for the kid. Now, 2023 seems to be the last season, I guess, for the East and Western divisions of the SEC. Those decisions are still to be made. Are there going to be no divisions? Are there going to be pods? That kind of thing. Texas and Oklahoma coming into the conference. So I don't know if you had your preference. What would you prefer? You want to stay with the divisions? You want to go with the pods? You want to go, with no divisions and let the 2 teams with the highest winning percentages go to the championship game? What would Rusty Mansell like to see in the SEC?
I want to see a world where that Georgia doesn't have to play Ball State, Tennessee Martin, and those teams in the first month. We got one game in September, basically. I think you got South Carolina. It's going to be a big game. And look, for selfish reasons, and as a college football fan, it's crazy that Georgia hasn't been to Texas A&M. You know what I mean? Like, and they've been there for 12 years now. Georgia, whatever they need to do. I think the 9-game schedule, to me, obviously it's going to break some traditions, but when you bring in Oklahoma and Texas, things are going to shake up. I think they're going to protect Georgia, Florida, and I think they're going to protect Alabama and Auburn. I mean, they're going to protect those games, and they're going to do the best they can. But I think the 9-game schedule is the way to go, probably maybe in pods that way. Listen, it's going to come down in May. They're going to have those meetings in Destin in May. And I think before we get to the SEC meetings in June or July, we're going to know kind of what's going on there. So I just want to get to good games, man. I think with college football, I get it, man. But we're asking these kids to play 15 games now. In NFL, I know those are professionals, but there's no gimmies. There's no gimme weeks. You know what I mean? So, and I do understand. I've talked to coaches. Bobby Lamb's a good friend of mine. And at Mercer, they had to go play Alabama. And you think Bobby Lamb wanted to go play Alabama? He didn't, but his program needed that check. You know what I mean? So I'm not opposed to playing a Ball State or, a UT Martin, one of those to help. I get those. Maybe you don't play them later in the year like we do now. We play that before rivalry week every year. I think that, if we play one of those a year and help somebody and you kind of give some younger kids a chance to play, gives you time to bring your kids to a Georgia game. Because every week, if it's crazy, it's hard to get tickets to anything. So,
That's true.
Yeah. But whatever they do, I just want to have good games and get a chance to see Oklahoma and Athens, or Georgia and Norman, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M, go to College Station, those types of things.
Yeah. And, of course, the expansion now of the playoffs after 2023.
Yep.
If you're Georgia, Alabama, with the expansion of the playoffs, you pretty well think you're going to be in, whatever it might be, however your schedule may fall out and whatever you might do in conference, you pretty well think you're going to get in with the expansion of the playoffs. As we sit here right now, of course, it's a lot of fun to just talk about college football at any time. But as we sort of hear now, as we look across the SEC, Georgia, SEC championship this past year. So who do you think, as you kind of look over the landscape, the usual suspects will be there. Georgia, LSU certainly is going to be there. What about the biggest threat in the SEC to Georgia winning maybe the conference again?
Well, I think what I'm fascinated by is these quarterback races. You look at Alabama, their quarterback's position's open. Tennessee now probably most likely got their guy, but, maybe it's open a little bit more. Obviously, Georgia, look at Florida, who's going to play quarterback there for them? South Carolina obviously got their guy coming back, and Spencer Rattler. What's he do in the second year? Because he finished strong, beating Clemson and Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, the kind of media, I would say media buzz right now is saying that LSU is a team that can take the step up. They got a lot back. We'll see with LSU, but until somebody kind of, would say dethrones Alabama. Last year they lost 2, so it happens. They lost 2 late, but we'll see how they come back this year. And certainly, but I think that you look at Ohio State, quarterback battle, Georgia, quarterback battle, Alabama, quarterback battle. I think the quarterback battles. Look at Texas even. I mean, there's you got Arch Manning there, and I know they didn't want that, but the press is already saying who's going to start between Quinn Ewers and him. So you look at these jobs. I think the sneaky team, I'm not saying they're going to win it, but I think the sneaky team and getting their quarterback back was Arkansas. And, that was a big deal for them because he fits their role so much to what they want to do. So I'm fascinated with the quarterbacks. Kentucky's going to have a new quarterback. So we'll see.
Hey, it's going to be fun. It's always fun, but it's going to be fun as we look forward to this upcoming season. Now, 2024 recruiting, you guys at 247 Sports has Georgia number 1 in the class for 2024, followed by LSU, Notre Dame, Florida State. And by the way, Florida State, had a great season for them last year and doing very well on the recruiting trail as well. Then you have Michigan, Texas Tech, South Carolina, Oregon, Tennessee, Clemson, still awful early, of course, and that's going to all be changing there. So what do you like about Georgia's 2024 commitments at the moment?
Well, it's off to a good start. You look at Peyton Woodyard, who's there today, the 5-star from California. He was in town over the weekend playing 7-on-7. He's been very vocal about recruiting. I think with Georgia, they didn't sign as many in-state, didn't have to last year. They went all over the country, signed players. But I think this 2024 class kind of starts with the number 1 player in the state, 5-star KJ Bolden out of Buford. If I had to pick right now, I would pick Georgia. He's a guy that can play wide receiver or safety. Look at Mike Matthews over at Parkview. I think there's a couple of difference makers that could play wide receiver, or I think Mike Matthews is the 5-star in Parkview that can play wide receiver. I love the in-state. Now, here's where it's going to be. I think is going to be the telltale is offensive line. Again, Georgia extremely deep, but if they have some people leave after the spring, that 2024 class becomes even more of a priority. You got a young man at Walton High School, Daniel Calhoun, 6'6", 345, 350 pounds. I know that's crazy and I think he's still only 16 or 17. So he let to feed that young man for a while.
Wow.
So I just think this is a little deeper in-state class. I'm interested in that, but you look at this, and Georgia's going to have their big weekend this weekend. The number one quarterback in the country, Dylan Raiola out of Arizona, will be in town this weekend. He is certainly a major prospect for them. So who do they get at quarterback? Obviously, to go with Ryan Puglisi, who I think the kid out of Connecticut that Todd Monken got committed. Mike Bobo obviously still likes him. So they're trying to take two, and we'll see what happens with that. But they've got a quarterback. They've got a 5-star DB. They got some guys early on. They got a lot of momentum early on. We'll see what they do with this class. Got a kid out of Pebblebrook who might be one of the fastest, if not the fastest player in the country, Dwight Phillips Jr. He has ran 10,400. Wow. His dad is the former gold medalist for the U.S. track team. So Dwight's got some good genes, and he can roll.
Wow. So 2024. Hey, recruiting never stops. Always be recruiting. That's the ABCs.
Recruiting, yep.
Always be recruiting. That's the ABCs of college football. In fact, somebody told me the other day, says, "Well, what do you do when college football is not in season?" I said, "College football is always in season."
It is always.
It
is always. That phone is in Glenn Schumann or Kirby Smart's hands, and that's what you sign up for nowadays. You're those guys that are successful recruiters. They're wired like that. Like they can. This is what they do, and so I think Georgia. I tell people all the time, like, can Georgia finish number one in recruiting? I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's what you feel, and you get those positions of need. And right now, Kirby Smart, his staffs are getting positions of need.
So Raiola, you think Georgia might get him? Or
I think they're in there. I think they're, they are legit. Listen, he's got an uncle that coaches at Nebraska. His dad played at Nebraska. He's got a sister that goes to TCU. So Nebraska's heavily involved with that. The problem is, do they have the roster around him? Can they get a roster around him? I don't know this quick. If Matt Rule had been there 3 years, maybe it's different, but there's a lot of connections in Nebraska. You're going to read a lot about that. But I personally, in my opinion, think it's either USC or Georgia. This will be a big visit for him this weekend with his family, see where he is. And then, I expect a decision for him probably sometime in May.
Yeah. Well, maybe Georgia will strike gold again. All right, Rusty Matt. By the way, how did Georgia beat TCU that bad?
Well, I'll tell you this.
I keep asking myself that question. How did they beat TCU that bad?
So I've said it a couple articles and said on a podcast. I was in Los Angeles on Saturday morning when they do the media day, and TCU came in first. And I looked around the room and I said, either this is a team of destiny or they're about to get run out of the building, because they just didn't have the dudes. I mean, they didn't have the big body. They had a couple of guys, but they didn't look like Georgia.
Yeah.
When Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State walk in the room, you're like, where are these aliens from? Like, these are 1% humans. They walked in and I said, either this quarterback is magic or they're going to get drummed. I didn't think it'd be 65-7, but I think I picked it 37-14. I think that was maybe Georgia scored 37 in the first half, whatever it was. But they just didn't have the dudes, man. They weren't ready for that.
And I wonder how they beat Michigan. How did TCU beat Michigan?
So I immediately, at halftime of that game, I went straight to the Michigan board, because I'm thinking the same thing. Like, how did they lose? And boy, the Michigan board was just coming unglued, and 24/7. They were just like, how did we give up this many points? And this is embarrassing. So, kudos to TCU, man. They had a lot of fans out there. I remember talking to a guy at the bar on Sunday night at the hotel, and he asked me, he goes, Georgia fans aren't giving us much of a chance. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, probably not. And he's like, well, I'm just telling you now, we're different. And he was serious. And I said, well, look, that's why we're here. We're going to find out. So it was ironic. When I came back into the media hotel that night, he was at the bar, and he had a few empty glasses in front of him. And I didn't rub it in on him. I just kind of waved at him. He's like, you knew. I was like, hey, y'all enjoy your trip. I kind of went on at that point.
But they still had a great year. So
they had a great year. Great time.
All right. Rusty Manziel, 247 Sports, joining us today on our podcast. Rusty, always good to talk to you, man. Get that golf game sharpened up and let's go play. All right.
After last week, I need to. I'm embarrassed the way I play, but got time.
All right, man. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Dogs on Demand would like to thank Southeast Mortgage, the official home loan lender of the Georgia Bulldogs, for sponsoring our program today. When the time comes to finance or refinance your home, make the smart choice and get your home loan from Southeast Mortgage. Your friends at Southeast Mortgage are ready to help you. Visit southeastmortgage.com/UGA today for more information. Be sure to visit Dogs on Demand on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and our great interactive website, dogsondemand.com. Join us for our next program as we keep you up to date with the latest sports news from the University of Georgia and more. Until then, be safe and go Dogs.